What's up, everybody? Miles Best here, host of Above the Noise, journalist with PBS, coming straight to you from Oakland, California. Now, let's talk about voting in the US. If you're a citizen and at least 18, you can vote in elections, period. End of story, right? Well, actually, no. If you've been convicted of a crime, it's possible that you could have that right taken away. We'll get into the details later on, but there are certain states that prevent a big chunk of people who did their time in prison from voting. Yeah, they got out, completed their parole or probation, all the stuff that they had to do, they did it, and still can't vote for years, or even for the rest of their lives. As you can probably imagine, there's a big debate around all of this. There's the ethics side. Is voting a right that you can't take away, or is it a privilege that you have to earn and maintain? And then there's the political side. If states change the laws and let people with criminal convictions vote, that means that there could be millions of new people hitting the polls, which could change who wins elections. So, let's get into it and ask, should you lose the right to vote when you're convicted of a crime? All right, let's role play for a second. Say you're a criminal mastermind and we'll say forgery. You're passing out fake checks, you're printing fake money, even Costco cards and season passes to Disneyland. But then you're eventually caught because your luck runs out and you're caught by the police. The prosecutor throws the book at you and you're sentenced to 5 years in prison. You do your time, you get out, and it just so happens to be an election year. And you think, hey, you know what? I wanna do my civic duty and go vote. But here's the issue though. If your forgery career was in, say, Maine, you wouldn't have a problem. Being convicted of a crime there doesn't affect voting, like ever. In fact, people in prison can vote. Yes, they get ballots and can vote like everyone else. Now, if you did your forging in, say, Mississippi, then you have a problem. If you're convicted of certain crimes, you lose the right to vote permanently. And forgery is one of those crimes. And there are only two ways to get it back. One is to get the governor to personally restore your individual ability to vote. The other is to convince a state representative to author a bill restoring your vote. And as you can imagine, both options are really difficult. I mean, we all have the governor's number. Let's just all call him up. Hey, governor, please restore my right to vote because I'm not in jail anymore. When a state takes away your ability to vote because you've been convicted of a crime, it's called felony disenfranchisement. The word felony is in there because it usually applies to the felony class of crimes, which are more serious crimes that put people in prison for at least a year. So we're talking violent crimes like rape and murder. But some states also include non-violent crimes like bribery or lying under oath or even drug trafficking. Alabama has a whole list of like 50 felonies that they say involve moral turpitude that disqualifies you from voting. That sounds really bad. Turpitude, I had to look that up. And yes, it's terrible. Most states automatically restore the right to vote after people finish serving their sentences. But in some states, for certain crimes, you can permanently lose your right to vote. Okay, so we've got all these states, and they have different rules around how people with felony convictions can or can't vote. Some make it easy, some make it difficult. But why is that? How do we get here? There's not one reason, but most historians and experts who study this stuff trace it back to the end of slavery and the rise of Jim Crow laws in the South.
So we have to literally go back to the end of the Civil War.
That's Keisha Middlemass, an associate professor of political science at Howard University.
During that time, these state legislators rewrote their constitutions. And in that writing is they listed crimes that could be used to deny people the right to vote. And forgery was believed to be a Black crime, that Black people lie. This was the argument. Black people lie. They will forge their name on documents, and therefore they're committing moral turpitude against society and can be restricted from voting.
Today, laws restricting the vote for people convicted of a felony don't explicitly target Black folks, but versions of these laws are still on the books, and they do appear to affect Black people the most. According to a 2017 study, 1 out of every 13 Black Americans of voting age can't vote because of a felony conviction. That's 4 times greater than all other Americans. Okay, so you're probably wondering why some states still have felony disenfranchisement laws. Well, the argument you'll probably hear boils down to something like, if you can't follow the laws in your own life, why should you be trusted to help make laws for everyone else? Which is what you do when you vote. Do you really want a convicted murderer, even though they've served their sentence, to be able to vote for judges? Do you want people convicted of bribery or embezzlement to have a say in how governments spend money? Remember, people convicted of felonies often lose other rights, like serving on a jury, owning a gun, getting welfare payments, and receiving financial aid for college. Why should voting be any different? And what about the victims of these crimes? In Florida, people convicted of felonies have to pay court fees and any money owed to their victims before they can get their right to vote back.
If you were robbed and someone's convicted of taking, $3,000 out of your house and they were ordered to pay you $3,000 of restitution and they didn't do it, did they complete the sentence? We hardly ever talk about victims anymore in this country. And there are people that are victimized, by violent crimes in particular, who I think that we need to be standing up for.
And most states aren't saying that everyone convicted of a crime should never vote again. They're saying people who committed really bad crimes, the worst of the worst, shouldn't get their voting rights back automatically just because they finished their sentences. That's why some states require people to go through a formal process to get their voting rights back. It allows the state to look at each person on a case-to-case basis to figure out if they've truly left their criminal ways behind them. And there is some data to back up this point of view. A recent study followed over 400,000 people released from prison and found that 2 out of every 3 were arrested again within 3 years. And that cycle of committing a crime, getting out, and doing it again is called recidivism. It's a big problem in the US criminal justice system. Okay, so what do the American people think about all of this? Well, when they were asked, do you support or oppose restoring voting rights to people convicted of a felony after they've completed their sentence? 63% said they supported it. Only 20% were against it. For many, voting is a bedrock principle of what it means to be a democracy, meaning it's a right that shouldn't be taken away. If you've served your time and now you're out living in the world, you should get the right to vote, period. Many go even further, arguing that taking away the right is a political move designed to prevent people from voting, aka voter suppression. Check this out. In 2016, more than 6 million Americans were prohibited from voting because they had a felony conviction on their record. That included more than 20% of all potential black voters in Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Think about how politics could change if those 6 million people could vote.
So those that are eligible to vote would change overnight in some states. For instance, the state of Florida is controlled right now by a Republican governor, and Republican state legislators have the majority in the state house and the state senate. But if everybody that was eligible to vote that had a felony conviction was able to then register and then cast a ballot, it could change who controls the state legislature. It could change who then controls the governorship.
Now, obviously all black Americans don't vote the same way. But the general rule of thumb in politics is that black people usually vote for the Democratic Party. And it's been like that for a while. In fact, since 1968, no Republican presidential candidate has received more than 13% of the black vote. And black people are way overrepresented in prison. They make up 12% of the US population, but 33% of the prison population.
The fear of the Republicans is that because of the racial disparities in who is incarcerated, that if everybody who used to be incarcerated was actually allowed to vote, Republicans may start losing elections.
And if you look at the numbers, letting people with felony convictions vote means it would most likely help the Democrats and hurt the Republicans. That's why most of the states with the harshest felony disenfranchisement laws are considered red, meaning they're controlled by Republicans. Think about what a change to those laws could mean for those who win close elections. Just look at Florida. In 2018, Republican Rick Scott won his Senate seat by only 10,000 votes. In the 2000 presidential election, the Republican, George W. Bush, defeated the Democrat, Al Gore, by 537 votes. Yes, 537 votes. Winning Florida gave Bush the presidency. Now, people with felony convictions weren't allowed to vote in either of those elections. But what if they could? How many elections would have different outcomes because of it? So what do you think? Should people convicted of a felony be allowed to vote? Or is losing their vote fair punishment for violating the law? Let us know what you think. And if you want to learn more about voter suppression, check out our episode on that. Till next time, I'm Miles Best. Peace out.